The entire contents of this podcast and website are based upon the opinions of Tammy Garcia and her guests, unless otherwise noted. The information on this podcast is not intended to replace a one-on-one relationship with a qualified healthcare professional and is not intended as medical advice. It is intended as a sharing of knowledge and information from the research and experience of Tammy Garcia and her guests. This is the Naturally Inspired Podcast, coming to you from our 1890 homestead in Johnstown, Colorado. I'm Tammy, and I want to thank you for joining us. Let's get started and help people feel good so they can do what they love for longer. Today on the Naturally Inspired Podcast, Khrystina Weinberg is joining us. Christina is a wife, a mom of two, with a background in education. Christina had two pretty healthy regular pregnancies and gave birth to two healthy kids. It wasn't until her second child was about 8 months old and stopped progressing that she began to think that something wasn't right. Soon after that, she would get a diagnosis of autism. Over the next couple of years, with more issues arising, she sought out alternative care from a naturopath and learned that her son had an aluminum level of 24 when normal range was between 0 and 7. So this set Khrystina off on a journey of discovery. She began to learn about vaccine injury. I hope you enjoy learning Khrystina's story today as much as I did on this episode of the Naturally Inspired Podcast. I just want to thank you so much for being on the Naturally Inspired Podcast today, Khrystina. It's going to be a really important chat today, I think, for a lot of people to hear.
I'm excited to be here.
Yeah, and I just feel really grateful that you're willing to share your story with us. So thank you.
So, yes, I'm excited that I got to meet you the other day in the radio station, and that this is kind of It's new, like sharing my story, because every time I've even like dropped a little breadcrumb just to kind of get the feel for what somebody is gonna, when you're like, they respond with "you're crazy," and then you're kind of like, okay, well,
Right.
I won't go any further with this. Let's talk about something else.
Right. So this is a great time for you to be able to share your true feelings and your true story, and just let people know where you're coming from, because I really think that we with our story comes understanding, right?
Yeah.
When we hear other people's stories, and it's like, oh, that makes sense.
Yeah.
So important to share our stories. So with that said, we always like to get to know our guests a little bit. So tell us a little bit about yourself. Where were you born?
I was born in Longmont, Colorado, and grew up in Longmont. My parents actually still live in the same house that they bought when I was 3. So kind of cool. We're like,
Coloradans, I find native Coloradans, like they're fixed, man. They got roots, and that's awesome.
Yeah. My dad grew up in Longmont. Like we've been here.
Big changes over there too. I can imagine.
It's not the same as when I grew up at all. No. Yeah. That's way different.
So do you have siblings?
I do. I have 2 brothers. They're both younger. One actually lives in Boulder, and he's going to CU. And then the other one, he lives in Longmont, and he does like HVAC work.
Cool. What was it like growing up with 2 brothers? I only have one sister.
Well, they are, so there's me and then the middle brother, and we're 2 years apart to the day. So we have the same birthday.
Oh, how cool.
And then the third one, him and my brother are 18 months apart. So there's like 3.5 years between all of us.
Oh my gosh. Your poor mom. Wow. So, a lot of toddlers at once.
Yeah. A lot of diapers, a lot of crying, a lot of fighting.
God bless her.
Yeah. But my youngest brother, though, he was 6 weeks early. And so should not have been as close as what he was. But yeah. So
Cool. So what was your household like? Did you guys grow up in a traditional household? What was it like? What did you
Yeah,
guys focus
pretty
on?
traditional. We did a lot of like camping and boating. Yeah, with 3 kids so close together, we didn't really like go on airplanes or travel that way. It was all just kind of, we'd go like eastern Colorado to some really muddy lakes
Yeah.
and just get together with a whole bunch of family and cousins and aunts and uncles and water ski and jet ski and wakeboard and tube and all that. We would go to Texas to my aunt's house once a year, every year for Thanksgiving.
Mm-hmm.
And we did a lot of like, my parents were pretty, my mom stayed home with us. My dad worked a lot, and they really made sure that like whatever we wanted, they figured it out and made it
Yeah.
happen. So like sports wise, we got to do what we wanted, and they just kind of, my mom did hair out of the house to bring in extra money that way and take care
Nice.
of us. So
Nice. Wow. That's
yeah.
awesome. That's really great. Your mom got to stay home. That's a
Oh yeah.
valuable thing, I think.
Yeah. Yeah.
So was there an emphasis on like natural health, or what kind of perspective did your family have as terms of like doctors and how you ate and nutrition and that kind of thing?
I would say, I would say there wasn't a huge emphasis on whole picture. My mom, being a cosmetologist, she knew a lot about like ingredients in products.
Oh,
And
okay.
so we had more like natural products that didn't have like parabens or any of the um, things like that. But like, I would say we ate home a lot, but it was more because it was cheaper to eat at home than it
Yeah,
was to go
for
get family
sure.
food for
Yeah.
5.
Yeah.
So I would say it was mostly on that aspect. There was like, so when the Gardasil vaccine came out, I know we didn't do that one only
Hmm.
because it was new, but not because of like ingredients or any of that aspect. It was only because there wasn't much research on it.
Huh.
So,
But it was thought about, right?
right. And we didn't do
Obviously,
food shots.
if they didn't,
Right.
yeah, they
Oh
didn't
yeah,
want to
my
do
mom
it.
was like ripped apart for not doing it from other, but it was like brand new, and she was like,
Right. Well, that's kind of interesting that she at least had that awareness at that point.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
but we had like the other ones, so it
Sure.
definitely wasn't like a safety or ingredient
Right.
type thing.
Right.
Yeah.
So you grew up in Longmont, you went to high school there and everything. Did you go to
Yep.
college?
I went to UNC in Greeley,
UNC.
and I got my teaching license. So I taught for a few years,
Okay.
elementary school. First grade is definitely that's my favorite. And
Cool.
the last year I taught was kindergarten, and bless those teachers. That is
Yeah.
a whole different world. That is like
Right.
a lot of work.
Yeah,
It's
because
a
the
lot.
classroom's like new to them. So they don't even,
Yeah.
yeah, they
You
have
have
no
to do like
concept.
everything, like even like how to stand in line and like
Right.
how to sit on the rug. Everything. So
Right. Oh
yeah,
my
first
gosh. Can you
grade.
imagine these kindergartners coming in with all the COVID
No,
rules?
no, no. My son will be in kindergarten this year, and I'm just like, he's not wearing a mask. Good luck.
I know. I don't know how they even, I don't even know how
No,
that even worked out in that thought process that a 5-year-old would keep a mask on their face.
no, no.
God bless them.
Yeah.
God bless them
Oh,
all.
yeah. Yeah.
So you were a teacher for a little while and
Yep. And then I left when I was pregnant with my second child, my son.
oh,
And
okay.
I decided I was going to stay home and raise my kids, and I'd go back when he would be going into school full day, which would
Oh,
be
okay.
this fall.
Would be this fall.
Yep.
So
And
when
we've
did you
known
get
for a
married?
while.
If I can back you up a little bit, because you're
Yeah,
married,
we got
right?
married in 2009.
Okay.
So it'll be 11 years this month.
Oh, wow.
No, 7.
Congratulations.
I know. It's like, I feel it's like flown by though. Like,
Yes.
I can't
A whole
even,
decade.
11 years.
A whole
Yeah.
decade. And you're
Yeah.
like, what?
Oh,
Yeah.
yeah.
I've been married 2 decades. So, and
Oh,
then
wow.
some. So I've actually been married longer than I haven't. now,
Oh,
which is
yeah.
weird. That's a
It is
weird
weird.
concept. Like married longer than I haven't. Huh. Wow. I'm getting old.
Yeah.
It feels weird.
Well, you don't look that old, so.
Oh, thank you. um, so I want to get into what we're going to talk about today, which is vaccines. And so let's start with the kids. Okay. So you've got 2 kids. You want to give them a shout out?
Yep, Claire is 8 and Wyatt he just turned 6 on the
Nice.
31st of May.
So Claire and Wyatt.
Yep.
And what was your first pregnancy like? Let's go back. Let's go there first.
First pregnancy, I was considered high risk. I don't really know why. I don't know. I think it was maybe just because I was small. I don't know why.
Okay.
And I know I had low blood pressure because there was one day I passed out in the bathroom from my blood pressure being too low. And then another appointment that I was at, I actually had a student there checking vitals.
Mm-hmm.
And she kept checking and checking and checking. And the nurse was like, is everything okay? Do you need help? And she was like, well, obviously she's alive, but it's like, that's her, it's normal. Her blood pressure is low. So I was like,
okay. So you experienced low blood pressure with your first pregnancy.
Yeah. First, they just told me to eat salt, and that pretty much, I never passed out again after that.
Oh,
so,
interesting.
So
that would have been a little freaky, passing out for sure.
Oh, yeah. 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 While you're pregnant?
Yeah. And your first pregnancy too?
Not good. Yeah. So hers was, and everything was fine, really. I think a lot of morning sickness. But then once that kind of went away, it was just, I figured out with her, if I ate before I got out of bed, I didn't get sick. But if I got out of bed first, I was done for the day.
Wow.
And so my husband would have to like bring me breakfast in bed.
Oh, how awful.
I know. It was awful. And then I could get up and get ready, and I would go teach all day, and then come back home. So
and you were totally fine.
Yeah.
As long as you ate.
No. Yep.
And how was your medical care with your first pregnancy? Was
doctor,
anything that stood out for you with it?
No, he was very good, very just whatever I wanted, that's what we did. And he just made sure everything was safe. And my nurse was great. And they just really we had a few extra ultrasounds for being high risk.
Okay.
And then a few, maybe a few extra appointments, I think. Mm-hmm. So he could really monitor everything. With her, we actually went to 40 and a half weeks because we found out that my cervix wouldn't dilate on its own. And so they actually had to put me on Pitocin to induce. And the hospital experience with that, I didn't know anything about Pitocin. I just was like, I don't want a C-section. That's all. Right. Whatever you got to do, I don't want a C-section. So we did the Pitocin. There was a point where the doctor came in to check, and he was checking the levels and stuff. And then all of a sudden he just lost it, yelling and screaming at the nurses. And I didn't know what was going on. I had my epidural. I'm just whatever, hanging out.
Yeah.
I guess they had forgot to turn the Pitocin down. And so they left it really high, and I wasn't feeling anything, but I did end up getting a fever, and I did end up getting sick and throwing up during labor with her.
No, how awful.
But
she was born healthy.
Yeah. But
no
his reaction through that, I was like, well, he's here for me. He's taking care of me. So we kept him again for my second pregnancy. But then they had to break my water. They had to make my cervix dilate. And then at the end, she flipped and turned face up. So then we had to use forceps and all that to pull her out. So she went through a lot of trauma. a
Right.
lot. And I was a new mom. I had no idea that in that situation, the C-section probably would have been the better way to go. But I
Right.
was just like, I don't want that. But
Right.
like the recovery time after was awful. So,
Mm.
but I didn't know. I was
Right.
just,
Right. Well, we don't know.
yeah,
We think
I was just terrified of a
right.
C-section.
Right.
So,
So after Claire was born, she was born healthy and you had a difficult recovery, but everything went smooth and you
pretty
just
smooth. Yep. Yep.
you decided to vaccinate her because that's what
Yep.
you
She
do,
did. She got
right?
all her vaccines. Something that was really weird with her was we were in the hospital for an extra day because of me getting a fever. And so when we came home, so we were in the hospital for 3 days instead of 2. When we came home that night, she like quit breathing and turned blue, and like we like flipped her over or like patting her on the back or whatever, and all this like stuff starts coming out of her.
Like
And
vomit or like
like
mucus?
mucus, yeah, like mucus stuff.
Okay.
And
Was it colored or
weird.
clear?
It was more like clear.
Okay.
And so I called the doctor and they were like, well, we just must not have cleared her out good enough. But then it happened again after she was 2 months. And my mom had her that day because I was at work.
Mm-hmm.
And my mom like freaked out. And
Right.
I was like kind of nervous about it. And I told my mom like what had happened. And then she was like, she did it again. Like, so that's a piece that I never connected to like
Why?
vaccines. Yeah.
Right.
And now knowing what I know, that's something that I should have been watching for as like a reaction
Mm.
time
Interesting.
was after a vaccination.
Huh.
And there was no way after 2 months old, they had not cleaned her out good enough
Right.
ever.
Right.
So I didn't put that together at the time, but now
Right.
that's definite.
Yeah.
And she was a horrible baby. She was the worst baby ever. Like,
Crying, colic, like stomach pain.
colic, crying, diarrhea, gas, abdominal, just the worst baby ever. Like she cried, she never slept. It was awful. For 18 months straight, it was just, we couldn't go anywhere. We had to be home. Like when I get home, get to pick her up from when I was working,
Mm-hmm.
when we'd get home, we had to be home by 5 o'clock. And if we weren't home by 5 o'clock, the whole night was shot. And typically it was like, she'd scream. We'd have to be home by 5. The screaming would start at 7. It wouldn't stop till 2 a.m. And then I'd leave at 5 a.m. to work and go teach all day long and every single night. And that just went on and on and on until that lasted for 8 weeks.
Wow.
And then after that, she was just like, that stopped, but she was still
just not a happy
baby. We couldn't go to the store. If somebody looked at her, she'd start screaming.
That's interesting.
And it was just so. And then like 18 months and she's like the best kid ever now. But that first 18 months, oh man. I'm surprised we had another kid. Like
yeah.
After that, like, oh, but my husband wanted a boy so bad that, oh man.
You thought, okay, we'll roll the dice one more time.
Yeah. Oh yeah. But she was not a good baby. But those were all signs that like
she was
something was
discomfort.
wrong.
Yeah. That's interesting because I never really thought about that with my own son. He was not a great baby either in terms of some of the things you just described. We couldn't go anywhere. And he would get overstimulated. Like if we went to a party where there was a lot of people, he would just lose it.
Yeah.
And we'd have to leave because we couldn't console him. And a lot of the time, you know, we chalk that kind of stuff up to just like personality or something. Yeah. But in all reality, is it?
I don't know. Because that was awful. Like, and her personality's not like that anymore. So.
Well, neither's my son's at all. He's probably like pretty chill person, you know? Yeah. So That's an interesting thought. I never had looked at it from that perspective before, but there's a lot of things that I didn't attribute to outside influence when it comes to our health before.
No, I was just kind of like, what did I do to deserve this?
Is this payback? Like they say, right?
Yeah.
So let's get into Wyatt. So what year was Wyatt born?
Wyatt was born in 2014. So he's 2 years younger than Claire. And that pregnancy was fine. I would say with Claire, I was more careful on like what I ate and like did everything to the book. Then she turned out like a demon baby. So I was like, well, what the heck? I got the McDonald's. Like that didn't work.
Right. I don't need to be strict. Oh, clearly that wasn't the answer.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh, that's hilarious.
Ate like healthy or whatever, but
right.
There was a little more flexibility with him.
Right.
And plus I'm chasing a 1-year-old around.
Yeah.
So I'm like,
yeah. Oh,
whatever.
There's way less pictures of me pregnant with my daughter than there is with my son, right? Like you just don't have time. You don't have time. No. Yeah. No. I'm still working on my daughter's baby book. So she's 14.
Okay. So I got time.
I got time. I'm like, when was this? Okay. We're backdating now. You do what you have to do to survive. That's how it
There's
rolls.
That one section in the baby book where you're supposed to record like when their teeth came in. And I'm like, maybe we'll record when they fell out.
There you go.
You missed that.
There you go. Got to make allowances. So it was a pretty normal pregnancy with Wyatt?
Yeah, pretty normal. Same low blood pressure. Like I wasn't as sick with him as I was with her. I went into labor on my own with him. They had to still break my water. That one was like, he was born like 1 day before 40 weeks. So pretty much right on his
right on time.
Yep. And so we went into the hospital. I had already been like counting contractions and like, I was kind of new to it because they had to induce labor the first time.
Right.
So I was like, I don't know what to expect. Like, yes, I had a baby, but no, I haven't.
Not this way.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that was like counting everything. I'm like, okay, we're good. We're good. We got my daughter to my parents' house. We went to the hospital and the nurse was like, yeah, you're not having this baby for like 4 more days. And I was like, no, I've been counting. Like we're here. Like, and we lived in Firestone and the hospital was in Longmont, which was like, we're going to be
a good drive.
30, 40 minutes to drive there. So I kind of argued with the nurse a little bit, and I'm not a very like arguing person.
No,
so
I don't see that.
I was like, but I just really felt that it wasn't right for me to go back home. And so she was like, well, you can labor in the hallways then if you really think you're going to have this baby. And I was like, I'm not doing this in the hallway.
Right.
So we went back home and we were home for not very long, not even 2 hours. We get back to the hospital and I'm like, now the thing is closed. So we have to go in through the ER. Oh. And so I'm like standing at the counter. They're having me sign in as a guest. And I'm like signing the thing. And then I'm like, oh, like, and he's like, wait, are you here for you? I'm like, yeah. So they like grab a wheelchair. They run me up there. I'm already 8 centimeters dilated.
Oh my gosh.
And yeah. So the first thing out of my mouth is epidural. Like I'm like, I'm going to miss it. Like,
right.
Oh my God. So the anesthesiologist was actually on the floor. He was able to do it right then and there. Looking back, I wish I wouldn't have done it because my feet swelled like you wouldn't believe. It was too fast and it was too, like he came too quick. And I wish I would have just done like, I don't know, some kind of muscle relaxer or something different than a full-on epidural since I only had 2 more centimeters to go. Like it wasn't, but I was dead set at that point in time. I was dead set that that's what was happening. Right. So I don't know if I could go back, I would have changed it, but right then and there, that's what was going to happen. So,
right. So he was born healthy, right? No complications.
He was, his whole pregnancy was fine. There was one point in time where I was like 37 weeks, I think. We had an appointment, and it was a different nurse at that appointment than my regular nurse. And when I was pregnant the first time, it wasn't safe to get the Tdap vaccine while you were pregnant, but they would give it
Did
to
they
you
tell you why?
immediately. They just said it wasn't safe. So, and that you get it right after the baby's born. And I was scared to death of pertussis. And so I was just like dead set. I have to have that to keep my daughter safe. So we did it in the hospital after. Then with him, which was only 2 years later, and they told me, you're going to get it at this appointment. And we do it in pregnancy now. And I was like, it was like a yucky feeling.
Right.
And I was kind of, because I was really caught off guard. I was thinking I'm getting it in the hospital after
Like I
he's
did
born. I was
last time.
already uncomfortable with the fact that this is a shot you get every 10 years, and I was getting it again.
I was just
after
gonna
2
say, I didn't get it, but I had my son in Canada, and then by the time I moved here, I was already pretty far along with my daughter, so I didn't get that shot. So that's news to me.
Yeah. So, and I kind of told the nurse, I was just like, why is it safe now? But it wasn't, I just really feel more comfortable getting it in the hospital. And she was like, we've done so many studies. It is way more protection for the baby to get it during pregnancy than it is after. And the baby doesn't absorb any of it if you wait until after. And there's so much more benefit to the baby to do it now. And I was like, oh, I would rather wait. And she was just like, well, if you don't get it today, I will write in your file that you are not to receive it in the hospital afterwards, and your baby will die, and that's something you're going to have to live with, and it'll be your fault. And I was like, okay, I'll get it. Like,
oh my gosh.
And
wow.
So
pretty strong language.
Yeah, for a nurse to talk to you like that, I was really like sweating.
Yeah, I guess so. Wow. So you did get that shot then.
Mm-hmm.
So while you were pregnant with Wyatt, and you hadn't gotten it with Claire.
Exactly. Yep.
Okay.
So that was a difference.
That was a difference.
And then after he was born, he had to go on oxygen. Mm-hmm. He had meconium, and he couldn't keep his body temperature up, so he had to go under heat lamps. And I think that was it. But like with him, I remember with Claire, they like cut the cord immediately. Mm-hmm. And with him, I was like, are they ever coming back to cut this thing? Like, what is going on? But now I know that was like so much better I didn't know. And so so he had like all this better care.
Right. Better care. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And so
what they suggested was better.
Mm-hmm. So I don't know, but he had jaundice for well over a month. And they told me that I was the one causing his jaundice because our blood types were different and that I needed to quit nursing him. And I had never heard that before at all. So I nursed him for 18 months and the jaundice did go away.
Yeah. Yeah, that's something I've never heard of either. That's interesting.
No.
I'd have to
I was
really...
just like, what? No. So I don't know. Maybe that is a thing, but I've never heard of that.
Me neither. So you bring Wyatt home and everything kind of, you're taking care of a new baby. At this point, did he get any vaccinations before he left the hospital?
Yep, he did. They both followed the CDC schedule. He only had the flu shot that I got when I was pregnant. He's never had a flu shot physically himself, but that's the only one that he's...
So you got a flu shot while you were pregnant too?
Yep. Yeah. That one that I was dead set on that it was safe and the best thing that you could do. So,
right.
And that's the only time I've ever gotten flu shots is when I was pregnant. I never got them outside of that.
Right.
So, He
So it's
was
just
like the best
really just the
baby.
pressure of wanting to do the right thing.
Exactly. Yep. Exactly.
So you
So
weren't an anti-vaxxer then.
no, I was very like, your doctor said to do this, so you do it. And they know, and you listen to them, and they're the expert.
Right. So do you
I'm
remember
afraid.
thinking about vaccines at all with your daughter? No, you didn't question it at all.
Nope. It was just, I didn't even, I didn't even think about like how different the ones she received were from the ones I received.
Right.
And just, this is what you do now. And a lot of that came from just friends and family and working in the schools with kids
Right.
and from the doctor. And so
You did
everyone
what
was,
everybody else did.
yeah.
Yeah. So when did you first see some differences in Wyatt?
It's hard because he was the best baby ever. Like if every baby was like him, I'd probably have 10 kids. He just was so calm. Like you could just take him anywhere. He'd just sleep. He slept a lot, a lot. Like, no, looking back now, that was not normal how much he slept. He slept all the time.
Okay.
And so,
Was that
that,
something that worried you at that time, or you just weren't really,
oh,
you
I
just
was like,
thought,
this
oh,
is awesome. This is so
easy
yeah,
baby. Woo.
yeah. He would nurse and sleep, and he never cried.
Mm.
It was fine. And so we could go to all my daughter's dance classes and he would just sleep. And I didn't, his is more looking back at
Right.
videos and pictures that then I'm
Mhm.
seeing red flags. Whereas I had no idea what those things were at the time. So like,
Right.
I guess some of his pictures, he has an eye that like is turned. And that is like a sign of not detoxing properly.
Oh,
And so
really?
that was something that a chiropractor pointed out that we had taken him to. And that was well after his diagnosis and everything. So that is since we did some cranial work and have
Mhm.
straightened that out. Um, Another thing with him was the sleeping all the time. He just slept all the time because he had so much toxins in him that he just
His body was probably doing more work and he
Yep.
needed to be asleep doing that.
Yep. Now, with
Yeah.
my teaching background, my whole like emphasis and view on everything was speech. And so the first things that I started noticing was from 12-month appointment to 15-month appointment. His new words were like, there just wasn't as many. They
Okay.
had really like slowed down. And I kind of brought it up to the pediatrician, and she just said, well, is he still pretend playing with Claire? And I was like, oh, yeah, they play like pretending to talk on the phone. They play with the little kitchen set.
Mhm.
No, they play with the baby dolls and put them in the bed. And so I was like, "Oh, no." She says, well, you have nothing to worry about. And you do that MCHAS screener at every appointment.
Right.
And so there was no flags at all.
Okay.
Then
How
from
old what time you're about a year old here?
Yep.
Okay.
From 12 to 15 months, the words started slowing down.
Okay.
From 15 months to 18 months, which we started weaning at 15 months, no new words in that time frame. Not a single one.
From 15 to 18 months.
Yep.
Okay.
Zero new words. And
So
so,
that was that the point where you're like, wait a minute.
yeah, that was the point. I'm still not connecting it to vaccinations, but
Okay.
I'm like, something is not right
Okay.
because we got to get like almost, we got to be getting to like sentences pretty soon. And we're not even gaining any new words.
Right.
And so 18-month appointment, I tell the pediatrician we've gained no new words.
Mhm.
And so she sends me to Child Find to do a speech evaluation for speech delay.
Okay.
And that came back as yes, speech delay, but there was nothing more than that. It was speech delay only. So he started speech therapy at 19 months. At also around 18 months, he started like getting pickier with food, and he would like only eat peanut butter and jelly sandwiches and drink milk. And that's it.
Wow.
Nothing else.
Okay.
So we were kind of like, what is going on? And then, you're like, oh, it's just a toddler phase, like peanut butter and jelly. That's what they eat.
Right.
So, but it was a little more excessive than that's
just your average kid.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So then let's see, we did like 6 months of speech therapy, and the speech therapist was like, I don't know, like we're not making any progress. So then
wow.
I want to have him evaluated for occupational therapy. I was like, okay. She says, maybe there's some
But nothing's happened here, right? Like,
right.
In their world, like nothing's happened. There's been no indication. Like, I'm assuming like all his scores when he was evaluated when he was born and stuff were all like normal.
Yep.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, so eye contact was always very good, very laughing, like very playful, slept a lot, but when he was awake, he was very chill, happy.
Right.
Fine.
Okay, so you go through the occupational therapy stage now, and what do they say?
So she comes in and she starts doing stuff with him. They even at one point they switched up therapists because they were like, nothing is working. And so in my mind, I'm like, what is going on? Like, why is nothing working? I mean, these people are in the house a lot and he's not getting any of it.
Right.
And I'm hearing all these other friends that are like, oh yeah, we got speech issues. And now we did some speech therapy and now they're talking fine. And I'm like, that's not happening.
So you have other friends that had speech issues?
Mm-hmm.
Huh. That seems like I don't remember anyone having speech issues when I was a kid.
Yeah.
Really?
I mean, it's tons.
Like it doesn't seem like it was common back then. Maybe I'm wrong. I don't know.
I don't remember speech issues I don't remember any issues with kids. I mean, I grew up in the big, like everybody was ADD. So everybody's on Ritalin, but yeah, I don't know. So they switched up therapists, brought in new ones, still nothing. We're getting no new words, no nothing.
Okay. So where did they go from there?
Then it was, he had turned 3. And so you don't qualify for in-home services anymore. After 3, you have to go to preschool. And with his birthday being May 31st, I didn't want him going to preschool because I was already set on he was going to start kindergarten after he turned 6.
Right. Being a teacher.
Yep. Being a boy. Being a I was like, and then we're like not talking. So I'm like, we're not going to kindergarten at 5.
Right. We are not ready. Yeah.
No. So I didn't want to do that. So we just pulled him out. Well, then things just started. I mean, it was after his 3rd birthday in July. He screamed straight for a solid week. And he quit eating completely. And I was just like, he's got anemia. Like something's wrong. He's not eating. He's not getting nutrition. Like, so I took him to the pediatrician. And I was like, I want anemia test done. Something's not right. And so the pediatrician drew blood and the test came back normal. And I was like, that can't be. Right. He's not eating.
Yeah.
How is it not?
So you got no words. He's not eating. And he's
screaming.
Screaming. Okay.
Screaming all day long for a week. And something is just not.
Right.
So then the pediatrician was like, well, this is autism. And I was like.
Just like that?
What? Yeah. And he just told me, he says, well, we'll, as he gets older, we'll put him on meds. And then eventually you'll put him in an institution and that's what his life is going to look like. And I was like,
wow.
So
What
then
is the test for autism? Is that a subjective? Is there a series of symptoms that how do you give that kind of diagnosis?
it's almost like you just have all these questions to go through, and then you have to fill out like always, sometimes, never.
Mm.
And so it's almost like, I don't know, opinion. And a lot of it is like parent feedback, because
Right.
they don't have so much time in there to give the test.
Right.
Now, we did
Seems
not take.
super subjective.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. With a gigantic label.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right? A label for life.
Yep. Oh, yeah. It's for life. Yeah. Yeah. So, and then you have to sign a paper agreeing to it. And so.
Meaning you accept that diagnosis?
Yeah.
Interesting. And what if you don't?
Then you
Then
don't.
you don't get any help?
Services and stuff. Yeah. Yeah.
So this is an insurance thing.
I don't know, because we can't get insurance to pay for anything. So it's like, I don't know. It's a mess. It is a mess, because it's all pulled into Medicaid for disability.
Oh.
You qualify for a disability to be able to access that.
Right.
You can't just have the autism diagnosis. So we're in like this year has been like insane with appointments and applications. Right. And he's qualifying for all of it, but it's holy cow. Like, it's not separated. So you're like filling out these forms and stuff that are asking like, why don't you have a job? How come you can't work? I'm like, he's 6.
Right. Right. He's not employable.
Kind of stuff. Like,
oh my goodness.
I don't know. That's a whole mess, just having it all combined. Like,
right. I can imagine. I can imagine, because it's all like just bureaucracy, basically. Right.
Yeah.
And in the meantime, your kid's stuck with this label now.
Yeah.
Right.
So I've been told that it's like you can lose the label, but you have to like go to court over it. I haven't looked for that, so I don't know. But if we ever get to that point, then we'll fight it then.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. But, so at what point did you kind of shift the way you were thinking? Because with both pregnancies and both kids, you're do as the doctor says. Yep, that's the right thing to do. So now you're starting to see this play out with Wyatt, and something makes you shift. What was it?
One of the occupational therapists that we had when he was closer to 3, so she was the last one we had before he turned 3, she had another kiddo who was going to a naturopath in Fort. And she says, this kid, there's something really wrong with this kid. And he started going to this naturopath, and he's not even the same kid anymore. And she was like, if you want, I can ask them who it is they're going to and see if she'll give me the name if you want to take him there. And I was like, oh, okay.
Yeah.
And she says something's not right. And I've been an OT for 17 years, and I've never seen a kid not make progress at all. No progress.
Right.
Over a year and a half.
Right. So how did you process that?
I was kind of like, I think it took a while for me to go, because, you're going to the naturopath. Our insurance doesn't cover naturopath.
Yep.
So I'm like, then it got to the point where we couldn't get an appointment at Children's Hospital to get an official autism diagnosis. It was a year and a half out. And so I was like,
a year and a half out to get an autism diagnosis? Is that because there's so many?
I guess. You can't get on the schedule. Isn't that crazy?
Yeah. That's nuts. Because autism didn't even exist really when I was a kid.
No. Yeah. And so me being the teacher, I was like, early intervention is the most important thing. We can't wait a year and a half.
Right.
So then I found that you could go to a psychiatrist and you could get a diagnosis from them. So I was like, okay, we're going to do that. And that same naturopath office had a psychiatrist. And so I was like, okay, we're going to see him. We're going to get our diagnosis from him. And then we're going to go to the doctor that works with this stuff and work with him. And so that's kind of where we started. We're not with that clinic anymore. We've changed. Mm-hmm. And I think that's a big piece too, is to know, like, you can change doctors and you're
at
not
any time.
I mean, when we were in Firestone, there was one pediatrician. So that's like, you either had the woman or you had the man, and they were half time, but they made up one position.
Right.
So you just can't really change doctors.
Right.
But now we're in Greeley, and I mean, I've changed doctors so many times. It's like, this one doesn't feel right, so we're going somewhere else.
Right.
But
so did you start to see progress when you took him to the naturopath? How was the approach different?
The approach was basically, yes, this is autism. We don't look at labels here, and we're going to find out what's causing this.
Yeah.
And I was kind of like, that's where I was going in the first place with the pediatrician when I wanted the anemia test done. Because I'm like, something's wrong. And so this doctor's like, yeah, we're going to run labs. I'm like, oh, okay, yes.
Yeah.
And so we found out like all these food sensitivities, food allergies, vitamin deficiencies. His gut was destroyed. Mm-hmm. They like everything you could think of, they tested it.
Right. And it all came back with issue.
Yep.
Right?
Yep.
Okay. So what did you do next after how are you processing this now? I would think if it would be me, it'd be relieving to have someone say, listen,
it was like, okay, we've got a plan. Like, because in my mind, I'm thinking kids are born with autism, and he wasn't born this way.
Right.
So something happened. I'm still not connecting it to vaccines at this point.
Okay. Is the naturopath connecting it to that?
He said yes, that it was vaccines. And I'm like looking at him, I'm like, dude, you're crazy.
You're nuts. You don't know what you're talking about.
I was just like, no, but I didn't do anything to hurt my kid. Like,
yeah.
So that's when I was kind of stuck. It wasn't until we had changed doctors, and this new doctor ran a heavy metal test. And that was like a slap in the face.
And because you have concrete. What did the heavy metal test show? That
showed mercury and cadmium and something else were all like 0. But aluminum the test was a 0 to a 7.
Okay.
His results.
That's normal range?
Yes. Yeah, a 7 is like really, really high. Like,
okay. But still normal.
Yeah.
Right.
His was a 24. And my jaw dropped. And I just sat there and was just like, so then I'm like looking. I'm like, where's aluminum come from? Because we use good body products. Like, I pay a lot of money for clean body products.
Yeah.
We have a whole house water filter. We have stainless steel pots and pans.
Right.
We eat organic. Like, I'm like, where on earth is this coming from?
Right.
And they're like, this is the amount that is in him is vaccines. And I was like, so then I'm going and I'm Googling.
Oh, I can only imagine. Wow.
Except for a live virus. The only ones that don't have it are the live virus. Every single other one has aluminum. And I'm like,
so how many vaccines had he had at this point?
He has had the CDC schedule up until like 20 months or something, 19 or 20 months, whatever. He's had them all except for flu. That's the only one we didn't do. Which, thank goodness, because that one's got the thimerosal in it. And when you mix the aluminum and the thimerosal, you start getting seizures. So we don't deal with seizures.
Right.
Haven't. Fingers crossed. We don't ever. But I'm like, done.
Yeah.
I was like angry, like,
Right. So
just,
you left the naturopathic office, you went home, you started doing research, and you really start to understand that this is what the deal is,
yeah.
right? And so how do people react to you when you at this point, when you're going through this whole thing? I mean, this is a family ordeal, I'm sure. When a child gets a diagnosis like that, it's a
Yep.
family ordeal. So everyone's trying to figure out what to say, I'm sure, right?
Yeah.
How they can help you, what like it's got to hit everybody kind of shockingly, right?
Everyone is kind of just like, no, no, it's not.
No, it's not autism, or no, it wasn't the vaccines.
Kind of a mix. Even I'm like not sure on the autism diagnosis because he still tested normal on repetitive behavior.
Right.
And isn't that like a big autism thing? Like,
Yeah.
so
Yeah.
I don't know. I don't know if they just don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know. But I signed off on it. We took it. There's nothing else. I don't
Right.
know. So, uh, but
So your family then, after you came home from the naturopath and you really, start diving into learning about vaccines, because you're incredibly knowledgeable when it comes to vaccines, just talking to you the other day. Um, when you tell them, listen, this is what I think it is, what did they say? What were your reactions?
my youngest brother, he has a little girl, my niece, and she is now 4. And they actually, when I was kind of bringing stuff up, they have stopped vaccinating her because they were like,
Mm-hmm.
they're seeing stuff with him and they're
Yep.
like, this is too much. Like,
Right.
we're going to hold off
Yes.
and not do anything right now, and
Right
maybe
now.
we'll
Yeah.
get some later. And
Yeah.
even his girlfriend, she is an EMT, so she's like, no, we have to vaccinate. And
Right.
now she is one who, she has all that medical knowledge and background, and she's at the Capitol fighting for no
Right.
no mandatory vaccines, no nothing.
Right.
She's
Right.
completely like,
Because when you dive in, right, Christina, when you dive in and you start reading and you start opening your mind up to this could be the situation here, the evidence is there, isn't it?
oh yeah, all those PubMed articles and all those, it's all there.
Right.
And
On
I
the inserts themselves for the vaccines, right? Which I did not know. So, my son was injured by a vaccine as well, and and we had no idea that's what it was. But intuitively, there was always that question, and it was years. It took us years to actually be able to prove that that's what it was. And now a simple Google search will bring that answer up for you.
oh
So
yeah,
the
yeah, that
flu
wasn't there.
shot and a couple of other vaccines, one of the side effects to them is ITP, which is what my son got from a flu shot. And
Yeah.
that's when your platelets don't clot. They go dangerously low and you're basically hemophiliac.
Yeah,
So,
and then you're like, you're a healthy little baby.
yes.
How does this?
Yes. So it's pretty common sense, right? Like when you think about it, everything's going along fine. There's got to be something that's come along the path that has derailed Wyatt, right?
Yeah,
So it's
exactly.
pretty common sense. So when you start digging into it and you can find evidence all over that this is, why do you think that you're not getting that, uh, you're not getting that response from doctors? Because you haven't had the greatest response from.
No, even
What has been your response from
our
allopathic
regular
medicine or traditional medicine?
yeah, last summer our regular pediatrician, I took the lab work in, and I took the some vaccine ingredients off the CDC website in
Mm-hmm.
with aluminum all in there, and I showed him the labs, and he's just sitting there and he was like, I didn't know there was aluminum in vaccines. And I was like, okay, well, there is. Here's this. And I said, I want a medical exemption. And he was like, you can't get a medical exemption for this. And I was like, but he's not detoxing it out. He's already overloaded. I don't want to
Right.
put more in him.
Right.
I was like, well, if you can get all the aluminum out and come see me again in a year and he's normal, then we'll talk about it.
Really?
And so I'm not that kind of person, but I stood up and I said, watch me. And we walked out. Like,
Good
so now
for you.
this is the one doctor I don't want to leave because I'm getting really good care with the naturopath.
Yeah.
And I don't want to leave this one because he sees a lot of developmentally disabled kids.
Mm-hmm.
And that's who you get recommended to, is this pediatrician. And so I'm like, this is the one I don't want to leave because I want him to see what we've done. And even appointments that we've gone in with him, he makes comments and he's like, I've never seen a kid with autism make this much progress in a year. And he's like, whatever you're doing, I know you don't want to tell me, but just keep doing it.
So let's get into that. So what are you doing?
We started with, we did some blood work, and that gave us, first the naturopath just told us, you got to go gluten-free, dairy-free. And I was like, this kid only eats peanut butter and jelly sandwiches. Like, we're not going gluten-free and dairy-free, and he only drinks milk.
Right.
So then I was like, all right, we'll go from cow's milk to goat's milk. And where we're still doing the peanut butter and jelly sandwiches because it's all he eats.
Right.
So we switched to the milks. We loved goat's milk. But then he made us get lab work done on, there was a food sensitivity and allergy panel.
Mm-hmm.
All this stuff came back and I was like, okay.
Right. So there's a correlation between allergies and vaccines, right?
Yep.
And what is that? Do you know how they explained it to you?
What I understand is when you're introducing new foods to a baby, you're doing them one at a time. You're watching for 5 to 7 days or whatever, and then you're introducing a new one. And you're watching for, rashes, diarrhea, upset stomach, whatever. But they tell you to hold off on eggs. They tell you to hold off on peanuts, and they tell you to hold off on stuff because if you introduce it too early, you're going to have an allergy.
Right.
Well, the vaccines have eggs in them. And so I'm like.
And peanut oil and peanut trace. Yeah.
So you're introducing that stuff before they're telling you to do it.
Right. But they're given the vaccine way before they're even eating food.
Yeah, exactly. So they're introducing it way before you do through that vaccine. And so he came out allergic to peanuts, allergic to eggs, and all kinds of other stuff. And I had never introduced that stuff before I was supposed to.
Right.
So
there's a double standard there. That's interesting that I think people would not make that correlation because so many people don't even know what's in vaccines. I mean, I didn't until it became an issue, right? And that's exactly the point we're trying to make here today. It's not your issue until it is.
Yeah.
Right?
Yep.
It's not your issue until it is. So that's why it's so important to have these conversations, because this is just a regular mom, trucking along, doing what she's supposed to be doing until this, gets presented in her path and she's forced to deal with it. And now she starts learning all about the different reactions, which all of those reactions are available to us if we ask for them.
Mm-hmm.
Right? So there's a pamphlet that comes. That's fascinating to me that pediatrician said he didn't know that there was aluminum in vaccines.
Yeah.
Because they're the only ones that actually get the notes on that. They're the ones that only actually get the pamphlet that comes with the actual product. Right?
Yeah. Well, and I mean the pamphlet that comes from the manufacturer is not the same as that CDC paper, the little double-sided paper that you get from the pediatrician when you're getting.
Right.
There's so much information missing.
Right.
I mean, I thought the only adverse reactions that paper tells you, fever,
Sore
rash,
arm.
irritable, sore arm.
Yeah.
That's it.
Yeah. No,
Like,
no, no. There's so much more, right?
there's
Speech delay, ITP, rashes, food allergies.
death. Like,
Mm-hmm.
it says right on there. And then people have argued with me and they've said, well, when they create that, the manufacturer has to protect themselves.
Right.
And they have to put every single thing that maybe could happen,
Mm-hmm.
whether it has or not, they have to just put it all in there so that nobody can sue them.
Mm-hmm.
But since 1986, we haven't been able to sue them.
That's
So why
right.
would they put it in there?
That's right. That's right.
This-
They are held to no liability whatsoever. Now the government has created a vaccine injury fund that you can appeal to if you have someone or you have been injured by a vaccine. So you can get a monetary payout. I think it's limited to what you can actually get. Like they cap it at a certain amount depending on your injury. There is that for recourse.
And I think you have a time frame that you have to report within.
I believe so. Yeah. But that's, a little bit of money is not,
And then you have
it's
to
not
know
going to make
exactly which vaccine it was also.
right.
And when they multiple at the same time, how do you know?
Right. 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 I mean, and that's worth pointing out as well too, is the number of vaccines and how much they have increased, right?
Yeah.
Since,
Yeah.
back in the day when I was a kid, I think we got 8 to 10 was the vaccination schedule. And now there's somewhere between, I've heard varying numbers, but with boosters and whatnot, it can be as much as 72.
Yeah. It's, yeah.
That's a lot. It's so much. So what was their plan for Wyatt then?
For
You continued with after you got the food sensitivity, what then did they implement?
so then we started like supplements. Like I don't even remember. I mean, my cabinet was so full of stuff.
Right.
And he had to have this like with food and this without food. And then we still like he's on a lot of supplements, but we've changed completely what we were doing then as to what we're doing. We've gone a totally different route. So, I mean, we did the B12 injections and that, like, I had to do them. And that was like, oh, so you had to like give him in his butt and like hold him down, inject B12. And it just was, I mean, it helped like bring some awareness and get him alert, but then he also started getting like angry. And so then like he may be like over methylating. And so we haven't done any of the genetic stuff yet specifically on him. That's my next on the to-do list with our doctors.
I bet.
Figure that out because we've done some glutathione with him. Like that naturopath was just kind of like, let's just try it.
Is the goal here to detox or or boost up? Like where you are both at the same time?
Kind of both. It's like you're wanting to. So his is hard because he's got so much yeast overgrowth in his gut.
Okay. So candida.
Comes from the aluminum.
Yep.
And the yeast makes a protective barrier to protect the body from the aluminum. So until we get the aluminum out, the yeast isn't going to stop.
Right.
And when he flares, it is awful. It is.
So skin rash?
No, behavior.
Oh, behavior.
So he'll start like going head first off the furniture and like.
So sugar, right? Sugar feeds candida. So how do you control the diet? What is he eating? Is he on a candida diet?
He is on the keto diet right now.
Oh, the keto. Okay.
Started, well, I'd be so picky that it's like I make keto waffles and he eats keto waffles for breakfast, lunch, dinner, and like I just make sure we're staying under 20 carbs. And so he's not like healthy, but he's not getting sugar. He's not getting
Right. So
carbs.
you're at least squashing the overgrowth.
Yeah.
You're not feeding
Yep.
it.
Exactly. Exactly. Whereas before he was on, so he did like the peanut butter and jelly. When he quit eating that, he just wanted pizza. So he ate pizza all the time. And so he's very carb. And then when we had to go gluten-free, I was like,
That
all right,
would
well,
be the sugar, the candida overgrowth. He's craving the sugar.
oh yeah,
So he's wanting those carbs and sugar.
when
Yeah.
we took that away, oh man, it's like drug addict.
Yes.
Like he'd find a Cheerio that had fallen under the couch and like go diving for it, and
Wow.
like drug addict behavior from a little boy.
How are you going to move forward with his care? It sounds like you're trying supplements, you're controlling diet. What else are you doing in terms of
So we
therapy?
started with a new doctor this year, maybe January. And I wanted to go, we've always done a naturopath, but I decided I wanted somebody that could muscle test because he's completely nonverbal now. We haven't heard
Yeah.
him talk since 2.
Yeah.
And I don't know. Like I keep watching behavior, but I don't know.
Right.
Like, am I buying this supplement and giving it to him and it's doing nothing?
Right.
So I didn't want to keep doing this. Try this, come back in a month, tell me what you think. Try this, come back in a month, tell me.
So much of that kind of practice is trial and error because we are individuals.
Yep.
Right?
Yep.
We're individuals. And that's another important thing to remember. Like there's so many people that just blow off the fact that vaccine injury exists because they think, well, I had my kids vaccinated and they were fine.
Yeah.
So, but that's really, medicine is so much of an art and it's really hard for us to accept that. Well, I find it hard. The first time my doctor told me that, I was so mad. I was like, excuse me, my kid has an ear infection. It's not an art. Like he needs medicine. And she was like, well, we could choose to not treat it and just watch it and do this, this, and this, or we could give antibiotics. And that was the weirdest call for me, but it was the right call.
Yeah.
Because we overprescribed antibiotics. But see, this is where the shift needs to take place in our thinking. Because we want results and we want answers to things, but we don't want to wait for them.
Yeah.
And we don't want to trial and error stuff.
We don't want to be in pain. But now I know me personally, I'm immune to amoxicillin because I've had so much amoxicillin in childhood and growing up. It doesn't work.
Wow.
And I have to be on like where I have to start right now is CPRO. And I've read the thing on CPRO and I'm like, people's Achilles tendon like snap. Like I can't have 2 kids and stairs in my house and not be able to walk. I can't take that. I'm like,
yeah. It just opens your eyes to
be healthier because I can't go on that as our first resort.
Right. Which leads to your whole like lifestyle shift, right? It's a thinking shift, but it's also a lifestyle shift because you have to work for health.
Yeah.
Right. And we're not used to that. We're used to just trucking along until we're not well. And then when we're not well, we treat it. But that's not really the way we should be thinking about health. Our health, we should think about as a long-time journey, right? It's a lifetime journey and we always have to be working at it. And we can do some things in moderation. And there are some things we should never do.
Yes. Yes.
Right? So it's really, it's a paradigm shift that I think we're getting closer, with people like you coming forward and telling your story, with other people sharing their stories. And, it gives people more confidence to accept the story and then share their story. Yeah. And pretty soon, to me, the evidence is already there. Like, I really don't understand how someone can say vaccines don't cause injury. I don't understand that because I can line up thousands of people right now that can tell you their story about how things dramatically changed after a vaccine.
Yeah. We take him to the chiropractor every 3 weeks and she actually explained it to me and she was like, you have to know that when you step out and you decide not to vaccinate your child anymore, or to change the schedule that you're giving them, or to skip some of them, there's a lot of research that goes into that. And there's a lot of reading, and there's a lot of, exactly why you're doing it.
Mm-hmm.
And you also are prepared with which vitamins you need to have on hand.
Right.
For if your kid does get this disease, whatever, you already got vitamin A, whatever.
You know how you're going to approach it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And you know what to do. So it's not just, I'm not just going to vaccinate my kid and they're going to go in full town and we're all going to die.
Right.
Like,
there's thought that goes into this, a lot of thought. Right. And there are alternatives to vaccinations.
Yes.
Right. There are other things that you can do to boost your immune system and to take care of yourself in terms of your health. So that being said, I have to tell you, I'm relieved I don't have to make these choices again. My kids are older. They're 17 and 14. And of course, there's a new bill that's just been introduced into Colorado. And that's kind of how we met. That this issue has arisen for me again, because I've kind of just flown under the radar with my son. I've just personally exempted him because I knew that that's what caused the ITP. And so we were able to just kind of fly under the radar. But now with this new bill, in addition to possibly a COVID vaccine, and that being tied to travel and basically a lot of freedoms in your life, we're facing this issue where we have to get people to be aware that this is not the right answer for everybody.
Yeah.
Right?
And if you look at Benadryl, penicillin, not everybody can take those, and we know that. So why is it okay that everybody has to do vaccines?
Right.
I mean, there's nothing out there that everybody can do.
Right. Right. Why is this one so hard to understand? Yeah, that's a really good question.
So afraid of what could happen.
Mm-hmm.
But when you start researching that too,
mm-hmm.
you realize that it's going to be okay.
Yeah. There's ways to deal with that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I had the measles.
I did too.
I had the measles and I lived through it.
9 months old. And I guess I should be dead because I had a baby. Like, that's the worst, right?
Yeah. Yeah. It's a really good point. So what would you say to moms out there? It is you don't want to scare them. And being a new mom is hard already. Like, there's so much pressure to make the right decisions, and you're on alert already. And, now you've got to make these decisions, and you've got to make them now.
Yeah.
Is the tone we are told.
You're scared. Like, this is something you've never been through before, labor and all that. And you're like, you're going through these classes and you're figuring out like how, and they bring in a doctor to talk to you about vaccines at those classes. And that doctor pretty much tells you, you got to do it.
Right.
And they play it off more. I mean, at least the classes that I took, they played it off more as it doesn't hurt your baby. Like, they try to like make you feel like you're not wanting to do it just because you think it's like painful.
Right. Like the baby's going to be in pain. Yeah.
Yeah. And so that's not it at all. That's not why people choose not vaccinate.
No.
Yeah. So I would say there's books out there on doing an alternative schedule that doctors have written. There's books on, there's just so many resources out there on vaccinations that doctors have come forward and written.
Right.
So,
and if you were to have a new baby today, what would you do?
Today, I would do a home birth and wouldn't vaccinate at all, wouldn't do an epidural. I'd still do some kind of pain something.
Management,
I am
not that savage.
No. No.
I don't blame you.
Yeah, I think I would do. I mean, those water births look really cool. And I have a friend that 3 of her kids were water births. And
there's other ways. right?
Yeah.
And that's what we want to expose. My last question for you is, first of all, how can people connect with you? Because we're going to be following and hearing more about Wyatt, aren't we?
Yeah. Yes, we are. So I have held back and kind of kept my story quiet because people just say, well, you're crazy. And I'm to the point where I'm like, well, I'm not going to waste my time trying to convince somebody.
Yeah.
I need to put so much effort into his care and getting him healthy.
Yes.
And his gut fixed.
Yes.
So I just stayed quiet. It was just kind of like, well, I just won't talk about it. We'll talk about like other stuff.
Right.
So now I got connected with the radio show because I had posted, I was so concerned about that bill in Colorado that I had posted a very personal experience.
Yep.
With a nurse telling me that my baby was going to die if I didn't get that vaccine on the whatever. And George from the radio actually reached out to me and asked me to come share that on the radio. And so I was like, wow, and then we had such a phenomenal turnout of people who want to know more. Right. And they have questions and they want answers now. And so I made an Instagram page. It's called Autism and Faith. And that is where I'm going to be documenting and organizing his story. And so you're going to see like what we're doing with diet. You're going to see throwbacks. You're going to see present things. You're going to see just supplements and muscle testing, chiropractor, and just everything that we're doing for him.
Right.
And
that handle that handle is Autism and Faith?
Yes, Autism and Faith.
On Instagram.
Yep. So it's brand new. There's like nothing on it, hardly.
It's such an important story for you to tell, Khrystina. And, you have such a wonderful demeanor about you. And this is really powerful because, in this movement, there's a lot of emotion around it because it involves our kids.
Oh, yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And rightfully so. I mean, we should all be very agitated and upset and angry. But unfortunately, when we're in that state, sometimes we're not the best communicators. And sometimes people judge by our emotions and don't hear us at all. So what a beautiful position that you are in, just with your demeanor and how you're presenting this and how, your heart is just focused on saving other families from this issue.
Yeah. And I think too, I'm sure I'm not the only one that was told my kid would just have to be on pharmaceuticals and institutionalized, and that was his life. So I think if you're in the same position as me and going through, you can do other things. And I'll be sharing a lot of that.
Yeah. And that's going to be so powerful, because that's a whole force there where people can get information and share their experiences. And I really think that that's how we're going to make progress with this movement. I'm not a big fan of shooting down somebody else or, bringing a lot of anger or bringing all this darkness of course we're angry. Of course we are, but we are not going to overpower Big Pharma. When we have millions of people buying their products, that's where we have to start, is with the people who are buying their products. And we have to educate and then join forces to support so that we can be stronger together and more confident together to say, no, we're not going to buy that. We're actually going off to the naturopath because that's what we want.
Yeah.
Which is true solutions that start working on the root of the problem and not trying to just cover the symptoms up with a Band-Aid.
Right.
Which is what they offered Wyatt with medication and then finally institutionalization. That's a Band-Aid.
It is.
We don't ever know why Wyatt is the way he is.
Exactly.
Right? With that model, we never even look to find out why. We just assume, it's idiopathic.
Yeah.
No, it isn't. Something happened. Right?
Yeah. I mean, there's other medications that people have a reaction to, and oh yeah, you can't have that one anymore. You're allergic, whatever.
Yeah,
So
penicillin.
why are we finding out after you've had it? Like, why?
Yes, which I think, and we're actually going to do a podcast on genetics. Yeah, it's going to be really interesting, and how that correlates with your sensitivities to medication, food, toxins in the air, certain things. So I really feel like that's the future in terms of vaccination. I mean, we got to make these things safer, but let's let them worry about that.
Yeah. But I wouldn't say I'm like anti-vaccine. The idea is great. Like, yes, we do not want these diseases.
Right.
But the ingredients that are in there are what I don't buy in my food and my body products. So why am I going to inject that in?
Right.
And there's got to be a way to get them cleaned up, because
yes, that's exactly it. And when we come at it like that, I think it's easier for people to digest and understand. Let's let them come up with the solution here. Make them clean it up, and once it's cleaned up, then we'll talk again. But right now, I'm not giving you any more of my money.
Yep, exactly.
Yeah.
Just like you're not going to buy something at the store that you don't want, you're going to go somewhere else. So
that's right. That's really where we have to start. We really do have to just talk with our dollars, because that seems to be the only language they understand.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. So anyone can connect with you on Instagram or on Facebook. How can they find you on Facebook?
Facebook, I'm just Khrystina Weinberg.
But you spell your name different. So would you spell it?
Khrystina. And then Weinberg is Weinb as in boy, ERG.
Well, thank you, Christina, so much for sharing your story today. And I cannot wait to follow your family's journey on Instagram and learn more about how you are bringing Wyatt through this process. And I look forward to the day when you can go to court and say, we don't need this label anymore.
Me too. Yes. Thank you. Yeah.
Thank you. And have a great night. And say hi to your little Wyatt for me.
Thanks. I'll see you later.
Bye-bye. If the naturally inspired movement makes sense to you, let's do this together and transform the medical model and help people take charge of their health. Learn more about how you can join the naturally inspired movement by going to naturallyinspiredadvocate.com or call me at 970-475-4862.